Kimkoh, also known as Shadow Beast Kimkoh, is a recurring boss in the Contra series. It is a large arthropod-like alien creature that somewhat resembles a cicada during its nymph phase, but whose body is composed of what appears to be an amalgamation of many other creatures and a large humanoid face. It seemingly occupies a high rank among the lines of the Red Falcon army. Originally, there was a single Kimkoh encountered per game, although later appearances added multiple individuals of its kind in some titles. This brings into question whether the name Kimkoh refers to the name of an individual creature or of a whole species, with the latter being the more plausible option. While they usually retain similar behaviors and attack patterns, their body shapes and sizes differ greatly between titles. Kimkoh's overall appearance is an amalgamation of several organisms combined into one. It has two large frog-like legs which it uses to jump and lift its massive body high up in the air. It has the ability to shoot biological or energy-based projectiles out of its hollow feet. Its upper head possesses a snout similar to that of a tapir, and its eyes can fire laser beams. The upper head's fangs and nose are directly connected to the main head, giving the impression of biting it. This main head is Kimkoh's most distinguishing and disturbing feature due to its humanoid appearance surrounded by tusks, which in some cases is its only weak point. Finally, it features insect or hermit crab-like legs sprouting out from underneath the human face, which allow it to quickly run along the ground whenever it attempts to ram at its opponents, or to burrow itself at great speed into the earth. Kimkoh's physiology remains somewhat consistent throughout its history, although there are a few exceptions. In Neo Contra, it is revealed that its physiology is similar to that of a cicada, living the first part of its life as a nymph with beetle-like appearance and an innate ability to burrow underground. At some point in its life cycle, the monster molts, leaving its former exoskeleton behind, and emerges as a flying butterfly-like adult. However, this trait is seemingly characteristic to only a few species. Interestingly, Kimkoh is notably one of the very few alien creatures in the series that in some games can be touched by the player without killing them. This allows unique methods to battle the creature. Kimkoh was absent in Super Contra's original arcade release, in which Emperor Demon Gava was the final boss. In the NES version, however, additional stages were added to the game, along with new bosses, one of which was Kimkoh. In its debut appearance, this alien creature is found at the end of the new final stage, Alien Base 3, which would remain as Kimkoh's only encounter in the series where it is battled as the final boss. Considering the death of Emperor Gava, who is usually depicted as the leader of the alien armies, yet this event does not bring about the end of the second invasion. It can be assumed that the original Kimkoh was second in command in the alien army's hierarchy and continued to lead the remainder of their troops at the time. Despite having frog-like legs, Kimkoh does not jump at all in its first appearance, however this would change in later installments. It also doesn't use its insective legs to ram on enemies, probably due to system's limitations. Instead, it remains stationary after emerging from the ground and shoots constant projectiles from its tube-like legs and the upper head's eye. It has a blind spot at its frontal leg. If the player stands there, all of its projectiles will miss and the player can fire at will until the creature is defeated. Returning alongside other bosses from prior titles in the game's Hive stage, the Golden Beast emerges from the ground after the player destroys the massive alien heart mini-boss. Its body has barely changed from its previous incarnation, although it's far more versatile and mobile this time around, jumping about and running across the floor. When its health is reduced to less than half remaining, it will dig its way back into the ground and re-emerge shortly after from under the heroes in an attempt to crush them against the ceiling, before commencing with another charge attack at closer range. In addition, the Golden Beast gel attacks from its feet and eyes cannot be stopped this time around, making the duel that much more difficult. In hard mode, its aimknife beams fire twice as fast. Also, the gel projectiles drop at a faster speed. If a player stands directly on top of a beast, it sometimes makes a quick jump to the ceiling in order to crush them, likely, so the player doesn't attempt to camp out during most of the beast's attacks. Interesting to note is that the humanoid face is now vaguely male and has no mouth. It also has an armored membrane that folds over the face from time to time to protect it from damage. In Contra Hardcore, this enemy returns not only with a vastly different design and body shape, but also with another member of its kind, making it the first time players fight against two Kimkohs. The creatures now possess a far more millipede-like appearance, and lack not only their predecessor's recognizable humanoid face, but also its muscular frog-like legs. In fact, were it not for their ramming attacks, their projectiles that rain downward after being fired, and players being able to climb onto their backs without dying, these two aliens could easily be regarded as a completely different species with no connection to the original Kimkoh. The first phase of the battle has players fighting mostly a ground-based Kimkoh, with the other creature occasionally emerging from the ceiling in an attempt to crush them against the back of its comrade. The beast starts off ramming back and forth across the floor, then digging underground and bursting back up onto solid ground, attempting to crush players hanging on the ceiling. When enough damage has been delivered to Kimkoh, it stops the ramming but will continue to use the digging attack followed by its primary forms of attacks. The first main attack, Kimkoh raises half of its body and begins to fire off a volley of energy projectiles, which rain down the entire area in front of it. Standing on top of Kimkoh immediately before it fires can help avoid this attack with ease. A second primary attack, Kimkoh from above, enters quietly from the ceiling. It constantly pounds its backside with the grounded Kimkoh, as both simultaneously move close to the left side of the room, then retreating back to their initial position. The players would need to time their jumps in between the pounding Kimkoh, then slide off the back of the grounded one before they get smashed. They must do this twice, as the attack backtracks toward the players. An alternative yet risky method is to time a frame-perfect slide through the grounded Kimkoh as it moves toward the player twice. The ceiling Kimkoh absorbs most weapons' fire, and receives no damage from any weapon. All of the above attacks can be easily avoided if a player hugs the top right corner of the room, although there is still a rare chance for the top Kimkoh to harm the player with its tail, depending on the sprites of both the player's character and the Kimkoh. It is recommended to keep climbing to the right, hugging the border, then switch to shot 2 and turn the character's facing direction only during firing a weapon. After the main Kimkoh has received much damage, it begins to flail rapidly, calling its twin, then it curls up into a shrunken position, with the twin also shrinking and interlocking itself with the other Kimkoh on the ground. The two now form a sort of ball or wheel that begins speeding toward the player, then crawling and spinning all around the room in a clockwise pattern while gradually picking up speed as the battle progresses, with the rhythm of its pounding sounds resembling a heartbeat. The Kimkoh will can be harmed by shooting any part of their bodies, and both will die at the same time after sustaining enough damage. The Kimkoh's different physiology from previous titles may be the result of the creatures being born from the alien cell that was tampered with by Colonel Bahamut's inexperienced team. Without the guidance of Dr. Geomandric's expertise, the alien hive and its inhabitants probably displayed several anomalies, although this is mere speculation. In Contra Shattered Soldier, once again a pair of Kimkohs are fought simultaneously. This time, however, they bear a far greater resemblance to their Super C and Contra 3 incarnations, featuring the humanoid faces with stitches covering their mouths but still lacking the taper-like upper head and frog-like legs. Their battle patterns share some similarities with their Contra Hardcore counterparts, with the biggest difference being that they do not merge into a single ball, thus making it impossible to kill both creatures simultaneously. If one of them is defeated, the health of the sole remaining Kimkoh recovers and the attack pattern changes, being more similar to that of their Super Contra and Contra 3 predecessors. They are fought inside a hive-like area, whose location is never clearly revealed. Due to the bright flash of light that occurs at the end of the battle against Lancebeam, Blood Falcon's leader, it can be speculated that the two heroes were teleported either inside his radically altered body, or inside the implanted alien embryo that was contained within his body, containing all of the genetic information necessary to reproduce the creatures battled by Bill and Lucia. In Neo Contra we encounter a variant of a species of Kimkoh that survived for 100 years in its juvenile stage. The surface of its body armor has been super hardened over the years, so it can keep all attacks at bay. Taking place nearly 2,000 years after the events of the last game, 3 slightly altered individuals belonging to a species of Kimkoh are now encountered, known as Muta Kimkoh. They retain the disturbing human faces without mouths this time around and the insect legs located right below them. But the rest of their bodies are very much like a pillbug's with a skull-like upper head while their eyes are dark red. The first of these creatures, a grey one, is seen in a cutscene at the start of Stage 5. After chasing and killing several of Master Contra's soldiers, it goes inside a dark room where it is killed off-screen by Bill Reiser and Jaguar. The second Kimkoh, a pale-colored one, appears halfway through the stage where it chases players all the way to an elevator. The third Kimkoh, another grey one, appears and jumps onto the descending platform. This boss battle demonstrates Kimkoh's new attacks, such as spewing out a pink corrosive fluid from its rear which spawns crawlers. It can also shoot out massive lasers from its lower head's eyes and jump around. Similar to the 2 prior games, it can be harmed from almost any point of its body. After dealing enough damage to the alien, Kimkoh demonstrates a very unique power not shared by its predecessor species: the ability to shed its body and metamorphose into a moth-like alien. This insinuates that either this newly evolved species of Kimkoh is the larval stage of the moth-like entity, the latter which represents the adult stage, or that this species of Kimkoh can quickly and radically transform into a different form whenever it feels threatened. Whichever the case, the moth-like alien hatches from Kimkoh's back and takes to the skies where it remains for the rest of the battle. It attacks with its mantis scythes by creating spiraling energy blades, as well as spraying a pink fluid from its abdomen that also spawns crawlers. Like the Kimkoh, this moth features a humanoid torso with a hood-like head that carries a human face. The true cause behind these artificial abilities found only in this species of Kimkoh are never explained. Although it can be assumed that many millennia may have brought about evolutionary changes to these creatures, who now roam free in the wild without an intelligent purpose following the destruction of the Moirai relic. This relic which most aliens were programmed to reacquire and bring back to their creator's sanctuary on Jupiter. It seems likely that these, along with other alien creatures under Neo Contra's possession, have been weaponized by the humans themselves once they began to reproduce, and clone them from samples of alien DNA that carried the genes of their predecessors, as well as cells. He has 2 forms, the larva form, juvenile form of the Kimkoh. It has been parasitized by the backers who live inside its body and occasionally discharge it out of the body. When excited, it emits mysterious laser beams. The second form, imago form, is the next form in the adult stage of the Kimkoh. Aggressiveness has increased since its juvenile stage. It appears to be ill because it has been parasitized by backers and its body is being eaten from the inside. Body fluids that spew out occasionally are very acidic and dangerous. In Contra Rebirth, Kimkoh returns in this game as an enemy faced before the final boss. Unlike in previous games, Kimkoh is presented as a regular enemy that's much smaller and weaker compared to those faced in previous games. As the player makes their way to the final boss, they are confronted by swarms of Kimkoh rushing and leaping toward the player. Since they're much weaker, the player is able to destroy multiple Kimkohs as they clear the path. The Kimkohs in this game do not use any other means of attacking other than simply rushing and leaping toward the player. They also appear during the final fight as a nuisance to maneuver across as the player tries to stay alive during the ordeal.